1 in 4 Americans deal with mental illness, either themselves or a family member. Tonight, we're going to speak with Jules Plumadore of the Mental Health Association of San Francisco about that fact and some innovative work they're doing with the transgender community. Jules, welcome.
Well, thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
I think a lot of people find that shocking. I did the statistic that 1 in 4 people in the United States deal with mental illness. What do you mean by that statistic?
We mean that officially 1 in 4 people will seek help for mental health challenges at some point in their life. And we want to be clear about the fact that that is just the number of people who actually step out and seek help.
So you think it's larger than that?
Significantly larger. Significantly larger. And the problem is that there is so much stigma surrounding the subject of mental health challenges that people are often afraid, they're ashamed, they don't know what will happen if they tell someone and if they ask for help. And that's what we're trying to do.
Right.
We're trying to reduce that stigma, raise awareness, and make it safer for people to seek that help.
Now, what do you mean by mental illness? I mean, you know, when I was growing up, you certainly didn't talk about it, and if you talked about it, it was, oh, that person's crazy, or they're weird.
Sure.
But we didn't talk about things like being a little blue or depressed as a mental illness, but it is considered a mental health issue.
Well, yeah, and that's one thing that I'd like to start with, a point where I'd like to start is the language that we use, because language has so much power. It can perpetuate stigma or it can reduce stigma. So we're recovery oriented. We know that people can recover from mental health challenges. So the language that we use, we don't actually term it mental illness, because mental illness is something that others people. It puts them in a separate category. It makes them those people. We tend to say mental health challenges because mental health challenges are a part of the human condition. It's part of being a human being. It's something that everyone experiences at some time. That can be related to grief, for example. It can be trauma related. For example, we don't want to call it post-traumatic stress disorder because it's actually an appropriate response to stressful events. So post-traumatic stress kind of says it all.
Right.
So when we talk about mental health challenges, we're not just talking about extreme things like what we think of as, you know, schizophrenia or bipolar, those sorts of things, although those are certainly challenges that some of us face. But it can include anything, any time that someone is having a challenge that they need extra support.
So the issue is that at times, a mental health issue could be appropriate after the death of a loved one.
Absolutely.
Or after coming back from a war zone.
Absolutely.
I mean, you should be kind of...
It's more normal, if we want to use the term normal, because what is that?
Yeah.
But it's more normal to have a response of distress and anxiety or sadness to those kinds of extreme events than it is to have no reaction at all.
You know, I know one of the programs that the Mental Health Association of San Francisco works on is called SOLVE, which I believe is for sharing our lives and...
Voices and experiences.
And it is specifically aimed at stamping out the stigma of having a mental health issue. Tell me a little bit about that program.
Yes, and I'm one of the peer educators. All of the peer educators, we all identify as mental health consumers, as people who have experienced mental health challenges in our lives and who have made progress in our own recovery. So we go out into the community and we talk to a variety of different audiences. We talk to audiences at universities. We participate in crisis intervention training for the San Francisco Police Department, landlords, SRO housing, all sorts of different audiences about our experiences and about what we can do as a community to reduce stigma and to reach out and be able to support one another.
Right.
Better.
What was or is the issue that you were dealing with, mental health issue? I
have a long history of mental health challenges, most of it related to not feeling safe in coming out as being a part of the LGBT community. When you have to keep a secret as big as that for a long time in a community that doesn't make it safe for you to talk about it, that takes a toll. So I've experienced depression, I've experienced anxiety, I have experienced a different reality in terms of what we would think of as schizophrenic symptoms, hallucinations, paranoia, those sorts of things. But again, it all harkens back to, as we were talking about, a fairly normal reaction for a human being to have to a very intense, distressing situation.
Yeah, I mean, when the top comes off a pressure cooker, there's a lot of pressure built up and deal.
Exactly.
Indeed. You speak about the LGBT community.
Yes.
What are the numbers vis-a-vis the LGBT community and mental health issues?
Well, mental health challenges are at crisis level in our community. And I can point to a couple of different statistics that really bear that out. We work with hoarding and cluttering behaviors. We did no targeted outreach to the LGBT community at all, and yet fully 40% of the people who've responded identify as LGBT. And in the transgender community, we are starting a program, hopefully in the next few months, called Hope in the Transgender Community, that is a group for suicide attempt survivors and people who are experiencing suicidal thoughts and feelings. And in the transgender community, if we were talking in terms of epidemiology, suicide would be a pandemic. 41% of people who identify as transgender end up taking their own lives.
Not consider it. 41% of people who identify as transgender commit suicide.
Take their own lives, yes.
Where do
Yeah,
those
die by
statistics
suicide.
come from?
And this is not borne out in one study, many studies have been done. And not only do 41% actually die by suicide, 70% have suicidal ideation. So this is just an enormous problem that has gone unaddressed for far too long. We've been seeking the funding to start this up. We already have piloted a HOPE program for suicide attempt survivors in general, but in doing the research ramping up for that, we realized, and some of us already knew, but we're able to take that to the table, that it is such a problem, such a huge epidemic in the transgender community that we absolutely have to reach out.
Right.
For.
And in our last few moments, talk to me about that program. It's called HOPE.
HOPE, yes, it's the HOPE group. It's based on it is the Wellness Recovery Action Plan, which is a tool that's adaptable to all sorts of different communities, and we are busy adapting it to the transgender community because, of course, we face specific challenges, and so that's something that we've been working on with a pilot group, and we're branching out.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on. We've been speaking with Jules Plumadore of the Mental Health Association of San Francisco, specifically talking about the HOPE program serving the needs of the transgender community here in the Bay Area, and I'd like to invite you to come back on and talk more about it in coming months.
I'd be delighted.
I'm David Perry. Thanks for watching 10%. We'll see you next week.